going to dissect a pig's kidney, locate its major structures, and trace the pathway of blood and urine.
What does our kidneys do? Our kidney cleans the blood of toxins, waste products, and excess fluid to transform them to urine. Kidneys are bean-shaped organs that comes in pairs. Now let us locate the renal artery. The renal artery is where blood enters the kidney. Now let us locate the renal vein. This vein is where blood exits the kidney. On this frontal section of the kidney, there are three main regions that can be seen. First is the renal cortex, which is this outer region of the kidney. It is a space for blood vessels that connect to the nephrons, which are the functional and structural units of the kidney that begins in the cortex and mostly located deep within the renal medulla. The nephron is composed of the renal corpuscle, which is responsible for the filtration of the plasma. This is where the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule located. This region is the renal medulla. It is the innermost part of the kidney and its main function is to regulate the concentration of the urine. You can also notice here the pyramid-like tissues in the renal medulla. This is called the renal pyramids. These pyramids are made up of collecting ducts that transport urine from the kidney tubules of the nephrons in the renal cortex to the cup-shaped cavities or calyxes, where it is collected before passing through the ureter and bladder. The renal columns contain middle-sized arteries and veins which carry blood between the nephrons and the renal artery and vein. Next is the renal pelvis. It is a flat funnel-shaped tube that is continuous with the urethra, leaving the hilum. The extensions of the pelvis is called the calyces. It forms cup-shaped drains that collect urine which continuously drains from the tips of the pyramids and into the pelvis when urine passes out through the ureter to the bladder. That is the ureter. Unfiltered blood enters the kidney through the renal arteries found in the hilum region. It then branches off into the segmental arteries and then it will run along the spaces between the renal pyramids known as the renal columns. These blood vessels are known as the interlobar arteries, after which it will split off into the top or the base of the renal pyramids known as the arcuate arteries. Then, it will further branch off into the renal cortex as interlobular arteries or cortical radiate arteries. These blood vessels serve multiple nephrons where filtration of the blood occurs in the glomerulus. Blood is supplied to the glomerulus via the afferent arterioles. Once the wastes are filtered, blood exits through the efferent arterioles. It then diverges into the peritubular capillaries which supplies blood to the proximal and distal convoluted tubules and the collecting duct and into the vasa recta, which supplies blood to the lobe of Henle. It will converge again in the cortical radiate veins or the interlobular veins. Then it will pass through the arcuate veins at the base of the pyramids. This leads the blood back to the renal columns in the interlobar veins, which then goes to the renal veins in the hilum region before sending the now filtered blood to the inferior vena cava of the heart. For the formation of urine, we identified three processes. First, we have the glomerular filtration, which happens in the renal cortex. The origin of filtrate comes from water and small solutes forced through the capillary walls of the blood vessels and glomerular capsule or renal tubule. Second, during the tubular reabsorption, which happens the moment when the filtrate from the Bowman's capsule enters the proximal convoluted tubule. This happens again in the renal cortex. Useful substances in the filtrate are transported out into the tubule cells and then returned to the bloodstream to the adjacent capillaries. Majority of water absorption happens in the proximal convoluted tubular of the cortex. Lastly, during tubular secretion, hydrogen and potassium ions, Creatinine and drugs are further removed from peritubular blood, executed by the tubule cells into the filtrate. These secreted ions plus the filtrate form the urine. The urine then flows out of the neck front tubule into the collecting duct, then passing through the renal pelvis into the ureter. And then down the urinary bladder. So that concludes the pathway of the filtrate that becomes urine. You don't even